Okay, hello everyone. Nice to see everyone again. Hope everyone is doing well. Welcome back to the Earthy Amy show. I haven't done an episode in a really long time, so hopefully everything goes nice and smoothly. But today we're going to be talking about something that I think is really important and something that I wanted to share that I thought about for a while, and that's my experience with COVID-19 as well as my family's experience. It's been almost a week since I've had symptoms at this point, and I'm doing really, really well, which is great. But I know that there are a lot of people who don't recover from COVID-19 and who end up dying, and people are losing family members, are losing friends, people they love. And so I think it's really important to share this experience with other people so that way, if it's helpful to anyone in any way, like how I'm recovering, what were some of the beginning symptoms, everything I'm going to discuss in this episode, so that way people can understand how to go about the situation if they do find themselves with the virus and how they can go about helping themselves. But I just want to give a disclaimer as well. I'm not a doctor. I'm not anyone. I'm not a specialist. This is all based on my personal experience. And so everything I'm going to say is based on personal experience. And just my overall thoughts on how government is handling the situation and how I was able to deal with it and recover. So just a small disclaimer, and I'd like to go ahead and begin this episode. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope it's helpful. If you can, share it with people that you love so that way they can also recover as well. So I will start the episode now. So we're gonna start from the very beginning because I'm gonna try to be go in chronological order because it makes the most sense to do that. But I'm gonna probably jump around a little bit, and I will hopefully get to everything that I need to get to. But so let's start from the beginning, which were the beginning symptoms. So just to give some background, my mom works at a nursing home in my hometown, and she works there, and she came in direct contact with two people who tested positive. And the one thing that I will say also is that at this time, people weren't really, at this point, which was almost 3 or 4 weeks ago, about a month, I would say that people were not really expecting this virus to get out of hand the way that it has at this point now today when I'm recording it. And so her job was not giving them proper PPE equipment, which is terrible. And that's not something that is just at her job. It's something that is happening in hospitals and other nursing homes. People are not getting the proper equipment that they need to cover themselves and make sure that they are safe when they are around people who have tested positive for COVID-19. So she came in direct contact with two patients who ended up testing positive. And these two patients, nobody was made aware that they were even positive. And so because of that, she came in direct contact. But as of now, from what I understand, nobody else at her job has actually gotten tested positive. So it's likely that we could have also got it from somewhere else. But we assume that we got it from her job because she was working directly, taking care of two patients who had it without wearing protective equipment. So she came home, and this is the thing where it gets a little confusing as well because I'm not sure if symptoms started happening a week before I actually started getting sick, but I was having like small headaches. They would come and go, and they weren't really severe enough for me to feel like, okay, well, something's going on, something's not right. But I did start getting small headaches, which is one of those symptoms, is having headaches or migraines that are really, really bad. Luckily, at that point, they weren't bad, and this was a week before I got sick, like I said. So this is, I had these symptoms. I had just the small headache. My mom, I believe she said she was having like small, like a sore throat, and it wasn't too bad. And then when it started to get bad was, I can't remember the date, but I will put it here for you guys. But when she started feeling bad was on a Thursday. I remember it was on Thursday. And at this point, she said her throat hurt really bad, that she wasn't feeling like she could, eat properly. It just hurt really bad for her to swallow and do really anything that has to deal with consuming anything like drinks and anything like that. Non-alcoholic, I mean. So she said that she had those feelings, and then the next day she started to get worse. And at that point she was still working. Didn't have any severe symptoms. Her job was taking they were taking the people's temperature to make sure that if they had a fever that they couldn't come inside, which I still think is not enough to do at a healthcare facility of any type, whether it's a nursing home or a hospital, because you can still be asymptomatic and still carry the virus and give it to other people. But so she started to feel those symptoms on Thursday, and then by Friday she was already not doing good. And then at that point, by Friday, my dad was also not feeling well, and then by Saturday, I was also not feeling well. So in a matter of 48 hours, I honestly would say we all got sick, we all came down pretty bad. My symptoms were in the beginning having a fever, and at first it was like 100, and then it started to increase little by little over the 2 weeks that I was severely sick. And so for me, it was body aches, it was the fever, and that was pretty much the extent of what I had. And most of it really centered around me having a fever. And the highest that it probably got was 102.5, maybe. It was getting pretty bad towards, I would say, the middle of the 2 weeks. And that was probably my peak. And like I said, I had a pretty bad fever. I had chills after a while. It didn't start immediately. The symptoms that develop over time, some of those symptoms are chills, having a fever, body aches, and those symptoms came on their own, and it wasn't really all at once. So like I said, it started with the fever, and then it started to progress into having body aches, then having chills, and then throughout this time, it was difficult for me to really eat anything, and so I lost a lot of weight. I lost 18 pounds throughout this whole process. I have regained 6 of them since I've been feeling better. But it is, honestly incredible that I lost that much weight in such a short amount of time. And that was because I was eating just so little food, because there was just I was exhausted from really doing anything. I mean, you couldn't really move around. You couldn't really do much besides just try to rest as much as you could, because that's all your body wants to do at that point. All it wants to do is just lay down, relax, and not do much. And so there was a point where I was eating, like, if you think of a bowl, you think of half a bowl, fill up a bowl halfway. I was eating half of that half. So I was eating just the bare minimum just to make sure that I was eating something rather than nothing. And I think that's really vital during this process. If you get sick, is to make sure that you are eating something. If you're, make sure you're eating like healthy foods as much as you can, if you can afford them. Eat lentils, eat whole foods, eat lots of fruits and vegetables, because it's really important that you keep your body as healthy as you can, and make sure it's going to have an environment that's going to kill a virus the same way that you would with any sickness. You want to make sure that you're having a very healthy immune system that's going to help you. It's going to help aid you in fighting this virus. So we ate as healthy as possible. There was a point where we had to have family members drop off food for us just because we were just so exhausted from doing anything. I mean, there was a point where all of us were kind of taking turns making one simple one meal, so it would be me. I would cut up potatoes or something and some vegetables for soup, and then my dad would I would go sit down, and then my dad would come and finish up and do something else, and then my mom would do something. But we were just all, and that's like the most difficult part about getting the virus, especially with your whole family, and there's only 3 of us, is that there's no way for you to actually like recover in the best way possible, because everyone is sick, and you just have to try your best to really get out of bed or lay from when you're laying down, and try to make food for yourself. So I can't imagine what that's like for people who have the virus, who live by themselves, what that experience is like, because it is extremely difficult to just do anything. I mean, I was eating a lot of oranges during this time as well, because I felt like that was the only thing that I could really consume, that it wasn't, a lot of work. It didn't feel like it was a lot to process and just a lot to do in general. So I want to go back to having these symptoms. So we all got contagious. We all got sick within 3 days, probably 48 hours, honestly. And it was just a weird feeling because we all came down with it at the same time, which is why I suggest if you do have it, self-quarantine in your room, stay away from your family. But the likelihood of your family also getting it is really likely, especially if you share the same bathroom, the same utensils, anything like that. It gets really hard to try to stay away from somebody, especially if you're taking care of them. So that's one thing. And then I would say halfway, I think on the 30th of last month, which was March, we got tested. So originally we called New York State. I currently live in New York State. We called the New York State Health Department and we tried to set something up, and they said they would give us a call back. And to my surprise, they didn't give us a call back for at least a week. So that number, we ended up getting a different number for the hospital that's in Valhalla, New York. And so we went to the Westchester Medical Center, and there we were able to get a test. And so hopefully I can insert some clips of my experience there as well. But the way that we got our test was we had to drive through. We had to have our IDs ready and our names written down on a piece of paper. They told us you cannot open your windows for any reason unless you are told to, which was right when you were about to get the test. So you have to keep your windows closed. You have to write your name, your family's last name on a piece of paper, along with a phone number, I think it was. And they just asked for that information and your IDs to be put on the window shield. So that way people who are checking people in at the very beginning know who's there, how many people are there. And they said, if you bring anybody else who is not set up for this test, they are not going to get tested. So even if you brought somebody else with you, they weren't going to test that person. They're only going to test the people who have signed up to have the test. So like I said, these were two separate numbers that I had to call. First was New York State, and then I had to call the separate number for Westchester Medical Center because New York State was not doing anything for us. And they just said, we'll give you a call back in a few days. So luckily we were able to get the test. And when we called, I think it was on a Friday or Thursday. And then they were like, we're going to give you a test on Monday. So they were really quick and they told us when we could come and how fast it was going to be. So I was really thankful that we were able to get a test so quickly. And honestly, I think the reason why we were able to is because my mom is a healthcare worker and she did come in direct contact with somebody. When they ask you questions about whether you've been in direct contact with someone who's tested positive, I think that's a really strong signal for them whether they're going to give you the test or not. As of recent, I've been hearing that, tests are now running up to $200 for people to pay, and that they're not free in certain areas at certain places. And so that I think is really appalling because there are a lot of people who need to get tested who are experiencing the symptoms and honestly probably don't even get the test and never find out if they've tested positive for COVID-19. And so I think it's really absurd that there are places who are charging now for this test that should be free for everyone. But there's so much limited resources that people, I think, who don't even have symptoms are still going to get tested. And I think that's kind of irresponsible because I think if you're not actually sick and don't feel anything, I think you should give that resource to somebody else who's actually experiencing that and feeling bad and not feeling good. So I think because she's a healthcare worker, we were able to get those tests so immediately. And so like I said, we went to Valhalla, we drove by, they looked at they looked at our IDs. Whoa, sorry. They looked at our IDs and then there was like a long line. They told us to be there by 2:30. So we went pretty early. We got there around like 2 and we waited on the line. And then it was pretty long. I mean, it was quick, but it was still relatively long. When you're sick, everything feels like it's taking forever. And so you go through this line in your car and there's a bunch of other cars as well. And then there's one set of people first who take your information, right? They look at your ID, then they're like, keep it there. And then you hit another point where there are the people who are looking at your IDs and they guide you into which direction you're supposed to go to. And so they guided us to our right. And then once we started driving, you could see the tents, as I'm sure some of you guys have seen on the news. They have the tents that are set up and people inside who are taking, who take a swab of the inside of your nose. I've seen even the inside of your mouth. They only did our nose. But so you drive through this, you drive up to the tents and it looks like a movie. Honestly, there's no other way to explain it besides saying it looks like a movie. It looks like something you wouldn't. There's no way to really explain it besides saying that it just looks like something straight out of a movie. There was tents, people in full body suits who were completely covered. And so when we pulled up, I think there was 4 different stations. So they had 4, it's either 4 or 2, but there was 2 separate lines. And so we were on the right and there was a left. So we were on the right side. And we had 2 people, they came up to us. First, they talked to us through the window, and then they said, okay, we're going to ask you to put your windows down and we're going to take a swab. It was like a long Q-tip and they just put it up your nose. And I saw previously before we actually went, I looked at a few videos of them doing the test, and it looked really uncomfortable based on the way that people's faces were. But I think it depends on who's actually taking the swab for you. I think some of them are a little more aggressive the way that they take a sample of your mucus or whatever it is that they're looking for. And it was just it was uncomfortable, but it wasn't too bad enough to say like it hurt or it was painful. It just felt really like weird, and it made me sneeze a lot afterwards. And so, it's really incredible that these people are putting themselves at risk, taking taking a swab and swabbing everybody who is sick or believes that they are sick. And it's, my heart really goes out to those people because they're really, truly on the front lines of this disaster, of this pandemic, and really putting themselves and their families at risk, the same way that my mom was doing when she was going to work. So I give them a huge applaud. I'm keeping them in my thoughts, and really my heart goes out to them and their families because the job that they are doing is extremely dangerous. And we have seen doctors all around the world who help these people who are experiencing COVID-19 symptoms or are on ventilators, who end up getting sick themselves, and some of them end up dying. So it's truly, a huge round of applause. And they don't get enough money, and they don't get enough pay for what it is that they're doing, and they deserve more. Absolutely. So after that, we waited. Maybe they said, I think 3 to 4 days we would have to wait till our results came back. And in those 3 to 4 days, it progressively got worse. I mean, the span of the sickness was 2 weeks for sure. And just every day was getting worse until you hit your peak. And then, and that was, like I said, in the middle of probably 2 weeks. And then the last week was kind of us coming down from being sick. But there was a point for me where I would say was probably the worst moment for me out of the entire time being sick, which was one morning I still had a fever. Every morning I would wake up and I'd have a fever. I mean, throughout the night I would have to take medicine too, just to be able to feel like I could relax in my bed and not feel like it was just too hot and just really uncomfortable, or that I was getting chills. And that was the worst part about the fever, is that when you start to feel the chills and you have a fever at the same time, you feel like you're cold and you can't get warm, and then you still feel like you have a fever and that you're sweating. And it's such a weird combination. And this one day I woke up, and my family is Ecuadorian, so we have some beliefs that if you follow certain protocol, that you will rid yourself of a fever. And so one of those things were putting an egg yolk on your back, and you bat it up, and then you put the foaminess from the egg yolk, and you put it on your back, and it's supposed to help with your fever. And so that's what our belief is. And so my mom did that in the morning, and I remember just laying there, and I, for whatever reason, started to get really uncomfortable just laying there. I started to feel like desperate, or like I started to get anxious from just laying there. And I was like, please, can you just take this off? Like, I was just telling her, like, I need you to take this off of my back right now. And as soon as she did, I got up and I had to go to the bathroom, just to use the bathroom. And as soon as I got up, I got really dizzy, and I felt like I was losing my balance. I felt really uncomfortable. I started feeling really nauseous, and I felt really, really weak. That is what made me feel the most afraid, is that I was feeling really weak. So when I went to the bathroom, I sat down, did what I had to do, and I felt like I could barely even move, and that I was losing my breath. And I felt like I was going to throw up as well. And I was just kind of sitting there thinking like, oh my God, I should just stay here and wait if I'm going to throw up instead of moving around. But I was getting so weak that even sitting up was just so uncomfortable that it was really necessary for me to just finish finish what I had to do in the bathroom and get up and lay back down. And so that's exactly what I did. I called out for my mom because I started to feel really weak, and she kind of helped me kind of stay up by holding me by my waist, and she brought me to the couch, and I tried to kind of run there because I felt like I was about to pass out. And I've never felt that way before at any time ever being sick. I've never experienced that, even not even being sick. I've never had that feeling before. And it just felt so awful that I felt like I was going to throw up and pass out at the same time. And I could tell that I was losing color in my face. My mom said I was looking pale, and that I just didn't look good. And, I got to the couch, I sat down, she gave me some fruit, a little bit of something to eat, and I ate some of it, and I felt better afterwards. But I was still dizzy the rest of that day. I didn't feel like I was right, and like nothing was normal. So I just tried to take things very easily. And then by the time nighttime hit, I was a lot better. And then the next day I was completely fine. And that was the only time that I ever felt like something was really, really wrong. There was another point as well throughout the sickness, as I'm sure many of you know, that some of the symptom of COVID-19 is also having shortness of breath. And sometimes people even get to a point where they cannot breathe. And so the worry that I had throughout this whole time was that I was going to be part of a statistic that had to deal with young people and them dying. And honestly, when you're in this moment of being afraid and scared and anxious, all of that builds up. That emotional toll that it takes on your body really builds up. And there was a point where I started to feel like there was heaviness in my chest, but not enough to say that I was losing, like I couldn't breathe or anything like that. But I did feel heaviness in my chest. I felt like, I couldn't really take deep breaths, but I could still breathe. And so, that heaviness kind of, the anxiety that I started to get was really bad because we were watching the news, and that also didn't help. When I was trying to recover, is listening to the governor telling us about these new numbers of how many people are getting it, how many people die a day. And you get afraid, you really do get afraid. And that anxiety and fear really builds up a lot. And it started to build up so much to a point where one night we were, trying to feel a little better, doing as much as we could. We ordered some pizza. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, like I feel like I really cannot breathe. Like I feel like I'm starting to feel like I can't breathe, that I wasn't able to breathe right. My chest felt heavy. I remember getting up to get a plate, and I just felt like my chest was heavy when I would walk. And it felt like it was kind of like, I don't know how to explain it besides saying that it felt like my lungs were jumping, and they just felt heavy. It was such a weird feeling. And when I sat back down, I started to feel really, really sad and scared. And when you hear that people are dying and going to the hospital, being on ventilators, laying on their deathbed, you start to think about all of these things, and they make you feel so crappy. And I remember telling my parents, I'm like, please, like, I don't want to watch the news anymore. Like, can we watch something else? Can we at least pretend that we're, not sick, or try to do as much as we can to, help ourselves? And so one of the things I didn't want to do while I was sick was watch the news, because it made things feel so much worse. And this night specifically, I started to feel that way. And so the only thing that I could do was just cry about it. And honestly, it made me feel so much better afterwards. I didn't feel that heaviness in my chest. I feel like that anxiety and the fear, it builds up so much. It takes a toll on your body. It absolutely does. Stress in general will do that to your body. And it just built up so much that I had to cry it out. And once I did, I felt a lot better. I felt like I could actually feel somewhat normal again. And I tried to just let everything go, and not feel embarrassed to cry in front of my family. But doing all of that was so helpful to me that I automatically felt so much better afterwards. And so I honestly suggest that if you are in a situation like that, you start to feel afraid, let all of that go if you can do it, by talking to somebody, or crying it out in my situation. Please do that, because it is going to be so much more helpful to you to express how you're feeling, rather than keeping it inside and letting it build up even more while on top of being sick. So I did that, and that was the other moment that I also felt like I was not doing well. My parents were getting ready to take me to the hospital because I was saying that I couldn't breathe really that well. But like I said, that anxiety and that fear really built up, that once I let it go and I released it through crying, I felt so much more better. So those were the two moments that I would say were the peak of me being sick. And I would say for sure that feeling like I was going to pass out and throw up was probably the worst feeling over that, because it was so weird. Like by the time I sat down, I felt like I could barely even see because everything was just going dark. So that's how I knew like something was not okay. I knew that maybe I was going to pass out and that it was important that I sat down at least. So that way, if I did, it was at least on a couch. So like I said, all of the symptoms that I had were really centered around me having a fever. I had a fever for, I'm pretty sure, 2 weeks straight. And in the final week, the last week, I was doing a lot better. My fever was coming down a little bit, but there was a point where I felt like the Tylenol that I was taking, which were the pills for fever reducing and just if you have a cold and flu, that felt a lot better. I felt like it wasn't, not that it felt better. I felt like in the beginning it was doing its job, and then I felt like it wasn't working anymore. And when you start to feel that way, you start to feel like, well, what am I going to do? You know, like I am taking this medicine to feel better and it's not helping me feel better anymore. Luckily, my uncle dropped off some liquid medicine, liquid Tylenol, and that I feel like helped a lot. So I also want to go over how we helped ourselves during this time to get better, because I think that's one thing that people who get sick or are experiencing minor symptoms or are thinking that they might get hit hard by the virus want to know about. So I want to go over some of the things that we were able to do during this time to help ourselves feel better. And one of those things was taking Tylenol. Tylenol for me was my savior. I felt like it was the only thing that would really help me during this time. And like I said, the first week it helped a lot, and then it felt like it wasn't really working anymore. So I would suggest taking the Tylenol in pill form first, and then when you feel like it's not helping you anymore, if you have a fever, for example, I would highly suggest moving on to having the liquid Tylenol, because that I feel like helped my body a lot more and a lot faster. It took maybe 15 minutes for me to start to feel some alleviation from the fever, opposed to the pill form that made me feel like I had to maybe take 45 minutes to an hour to actually start to feel. So the liquid form was a huge saver in my last week, because that made me feel like I was actually getting better and that I could function somewhat. And so there's that. But also one of the things that I think is really important as well is to eat healthy as much as you can. If not at every meal, just as much as you can. I mean, I suggest doing it every time you eat. Eat fruits, eat vegetables. If you can eat oranges, definitely eat oranges. They have vitamin C in them. Make sure that you are eating plenty of greens as well. Just having fruits and vegetables in general is going to be really helpful to your body. And I think when you are sick, yes, you don't want to really eat too much. I lost a lot of my appetite. I didn't really want to eat. It was a lot of work. But the most important thing that you can do during this time is to make sure you're giving your body what it needs to fight off this virus. And the last thing you should be doing is putting crappy food in your body. That is not going to help you and your immune system fight off this virus. So the best thing that you can do is eat plenty of fresh fruit and vegetable if you can. If you can have family members drop it off for you, have them do that if you can. If you're not too sick yet, stock up on them. You can freeze them. You can freeze fruits and vegetables as long as you prepare them in the right way. And you can put them in your fridge, and you can take them out when you need them, and make sure you do that. And also, speaking of freezing things, I would not suggest taking anything that's cold. Don't drink cold water. Don't have anything that's cold. If you have a fever, of course, you want to drink something that's cold. The last thing you want to do is drink something that's hot. But it's based on some of the stories that I've heard from people who have died in Ecuador, from here. It seems like people don't take care of themselves enough when they have those symptoms, and they start to, once they feel better, they go outside into the cold, or they start walking around without like a sweater and long pants on, like sweatpants, and really covering your body, making sure that you're keeping your body safe from the cold. That's also another belief that we have, is that if you have a fever, you do not expose yourself to the cold, even though that's exactly what you want to do. So you don't take cold showers for a fever, because that's going to make it worse. And what you want to do instead is try to take as many warm liquids as you can. Keep yourself warm if you can. Obviously, don't drown yourself in like warm covers. Wear leggings if you can, or sweatpants and a long shirt if you can. Just keep yourself warm and away from any cold air, because that's also going to affect your lungs as well. I noticed that if I started to breathe in somewhat cold air, that it would irritate my lungs and irritate my chest in general. And so I highly suggest that you try to keep away from anything that's cold. So no smoothies or anything that's cold, like cold water. I highly suggest that you just take warm liquids and have as many soups as you can, because that'll be really beneficial to you as well. And like I said, put as many vegetables as you can in your soup if you're going to have that. If you're going to have some rice, make sure you also have plenty of veggies in your meal. All of that is going to be really helpful to you. And I feel like it was really helpful to all of us in fighting this virus as much as we could. Yes, it still took us 2 weeks no matter what, but I mean, that's what we had to go through, unfortunately. And I know that it's different for everyone. And that's also something I want to express, is that just because I got it this way doesn't mean that you are going to get it in the same way. Some family members of mine have experienced heaviness in the chest and not being able to breathe, that they had to go to the hospital. My other family member was vomiting. They couldn't keep anything down. They would vomit. I don't know if they had any diarrhea, but those are also some symptoms that people have been experiencing. And so it's very different for everyone. So my experience might not be the same as yours, but I still think that these steps are really important for you to take. So fruits and veggies, super important. Please have those if you get sick. Even if you're not sick, have as many as you can, because that is keeping your immune system in balance and in check, and helping your body fight off anything that could come its way. So make sure you eat as healthy as possible. So I also want to say, go over some of the vitamins we were taking. Towards the last week, we ended up taking elderberry, which has zinc in it. I think most elderberry gummies, or I don't know if they have it in pill form, come with zinc either way. And so that was one thing that a doctor was explaining, was that's good for the flu. So if you can get your hands on it, definitely do, and have whatever recommended serving they tell you on the bottle. For us, it was 2 gummies a day. And so we would have that. And I felt like that was helpful. I'm not really sure if I don't want to say that it definitely helped a lot, but I think it was definitely useful to have. And I don't think it hurt to also take those. And the other thing that I was taking was probiotics as well. So you can have kombucha if you'd like, because that's a probiotic. But you could also have it in pill form. I know I take it for myself, and this is for women's health. And it's the live probiotics. And so that was really helpful, I think, as well, because it just helps your overall immune system and your gut as well. And so that's really important to take. Anything that is healthy for you that you can help just keep your immune system as boosted as possible, I think is going to be really helpful. So with that being said, also taking, if you have multivitamins, I would say take those as well if you can. We didn't have any besides the elderberry, and I felt like the elderberry, as well as taking B12. I'm vegan, so I naturally have to take B12, but I know that was something that was really important too. You can also take vitamin C. That was something that was going around, but I personally like to eat as many vitamins as I can rather than take them in a pill form. We got the vitamin C either way. I didn't take any of the pills because I was eating a bunch of oranges every day. And I felt like I was fine, and either way, the virus is going to take its course the way it's going to. You can't really make it go faster or, accelerate it. You just have to ride the wave as best as you can and try to keep yourself healthy during that time. So one other thing that I think is important to mention is, I'm sure if you are from the Caribbean or you're from South America, as far as I knew, a lot of people were talking about having this weird tea concoction that had, what is it called? Onion in it and like eucalyptus and something else. It was just a weird combination that sometimes they said that you would have to smell and then you would also have to consume. And the eucalyptus is supposed to be really good for your lungs. So that's why they were encouraging people to smell the concoction and then also consume it. I think I had 1 cup, and that was when I think I was like doing really bad, and I felt like it went down just completely normally. I didn't have any trouble consuming it. And that was the first time and the last time I had it, because in the second week that I was feeling bad, I started to experience a weird smell, not even a loss of smell or taste, but just a weird smell. It's hard to explain besides, so I'll give you an example. One morning I woke up, and every morning I would have an orange so I could take my medicine, so I could take the Tylenol with it. So that way I wasn't taking Tylenol on an empty stomach, because I realized that was bothering me. I did it once. And so I would eat the orange in the morning, take medicine, take some water, and I would, be fine for the morning. This one particular morning, I woke up and I opened the orange, and I remember thinking it smelled so, so bad. And I had no idea why. I was like, what is going on with this orange? And I realized that it wasn't the orange, it was me that was smelling something weird. And anything that was onion and garlic related smelled so terrible. There's no other way to explain it besides it just smelled so bad. I remember it made me gag, and I was so confused because I was eating oranges so consistently that the fact that it went from one day being fine to the next morning not being okay was so strange to me. But it was such a weird experience. So if you also have that symptom, I think that's pretty normal. That's something that seems pretty common in people who get sick as well, from what I'm reading, is that they have a sense of they lose their taste and their smell, but also they might have a weird smelling sensation. And for me, it was just the weird smelling sensation. Some things smelled worse than others, like the oranges smelled really bad. I haven't had an orange as of recent, so I think today I'm gonna try and have another one and see if it smells funny. But luckily my smell is coming back to normal. I don't feel like I have that weird smell. Even when I would blow my nose, I would have this weird garlicky smell or something. It's so hard to explain. And if you've had that experience, please let me know in the comments below, because I'm wondering if that's something that's common or not. But it was just a weird smell. So that was one other symptom that I experienced once I started to actually get better. And so at this point, where I'm at is I don't have any real symptoms anymore. The only thing that I would say that I have is if I do too much physical work, or if I'm doing too much just around the house, I will get really not really exhausted as I used to, because I used to get much more exhausted, but as of recent, I haven't been that exhausted anymore, which is a really good sign to me, that I'm recovering really well. But I just doing really simple things like organizing or moving things around can be really exhausting. As of recent, I've been trying to do some dancing, just like dancing in my room, nothing crazy, just to try to help my lungs kind of get back to normal, trying to exercise a little bit, not overexerting myself because I know that I'm still recovering, but trying to feel a little better, trying to help myself and my lungs by trying to work out a little bit, or dancing, for example, which is not really a crazy workout, but I did that yesterday and I sweat a lot. And I don't know if it's because I'm just not getting enough oxygen yet. And I'm still kind of, like I said, in this recovery process. But I did sweat a lot, and I feel like it was helpful though, because the more that you continue to move around and feel like your normal self, the more that you're helping your body to recover and do better. So that's what I'm trying to do as of now. I haven't had any Tylenol or any medicine for any symptoms. I've been symptom free, I would say, besides that feeling of fatigue. And I haven't had it for about a week now. I think tomorrow makes 1 week. So I am so thankful that we have been able to recover quickly and soundly, and that nobody in my family had to go to the hospital, that none of us had to go through something so severe, or that I had to lose a parent, because it's happening to many, many people. They're losing their family members, their loved ones, and it's a really scary situation. And like I said, there was a point where I felt really afraid for myself and my family. And when you're just in a moment of unknown, of being in the unknown, you're just thinking about everything that could go wrong. So I'm really thankful that nothing happened severely. And I'm really thankful that none of my family members, my close family members, have had to go through this as well. So those are all of the things that have happened in that time. I do want to also mention that we did call to do a follow-up testing. And when we called, this was yesterday. And when we called, they said that they weren't doing retesting for people, and the only people that they would do it for is essential workers who had to go back to work. But the honest reality is most places like nursing homes and hospitals are having their people come back no matter what, because there's a shortage of people in general, that they just need everyone to come back. If they feel pretty decent, if you're like 90% okay, then you can come back to work. But I think that it's irresponsible, honestly, for people to continue going back to work unless they feel 100% okay. Like if you still have a cough, I don't think you should go back to work. If you have sweats, which is what my mom has, I don't think you should be going back to work. You should be 100% recovered from your symptoms. And the guidelines on New York State's health website is that you have to have 3 days of not having taken any medicine for fever or any body aches or anything like that, and then a whole week since your last symptom. So for me, I would say it's hard to determine, and for them as well, it's hard to determine whether or not I am cured of the virus. I'm definitely doing a lot better than my family is. Even though I think I got hit the hardest with the fever, I'm doing a lot better. Haven't had any sweats. My family has been experiencing that, but I luckily have not had to go through that, which is great because they say that it's pretty bad. Like throughout the night, they've had to change their clothes just because they sweat so much. And it's just really hard to go through it. And so that could be like a follow-up symptom from having a fever. I'm not sure what it is, but that's what my assumption is. And, luckily they're doing a lot better. They're not sweating as much anymore, but still it's part of being sick. And until my mom no longer has that feeling or has gone 3 days at minimum, then she can consider going back to work. But I think it's just such a delicate situation because we need people in hospitals and in nursing homes to take care of the people who are there. But if you're sick, the last thing you should be doing or considering is going back to work and infecting other people. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. I don't think that they should be forcing people to come back or urging people to come back unless they are 100% ready to go and no longer coughing or having sweats or having like a loss of breath or being exhausted. Luckily, I work at home and I don't have to go anywhere or do any physical work. So I'm really thankful for that. And I think a lot of us during this time should try to remember that there are plenty of people who are continuing going to work because they have to, because they are essential workers. And that if you can work from home and you are making money while being at home in the safety of your home, I don't want to tell you to be grateful, but, to count your blessings, because there are people who cannot afford to stay home, who need to work, who need to take care of their bills, pay rent still. I know that there is a huge issue with rent strike and trying to get everyone to organize. They're organizing people in the city, at least, to go on rent strike and make sure that people who cannot afford to pay their rent don't have to. And I 100% agree with that. I think that people who also pay mortgages should also go on strike, but it's such a delicate situation that it's for a whole nother episode. So I'm going to hold off on those comments. But yeah, so one other thing before I close off this episode is taking a look at the numbers that we're seeing from the governor in New York, but overall in different counties. For example, Westchester County. We just got some new numbers yesterday from my job, and so it's getting pretty bad. I mean, there was I think it was like 3,000 something in Mount Vernon, and just closer to this, the closer you get to the city, the more numbers you see. But I think a lot of those numbers are off because there are people who are at home who have these symptoms of COVID-19 who cannot get a test. And some of them even die at home because they just were not able to get a test and were not able to confirm, and they pass away in their home. And those people are not being counted, as far as I'm concerned, as part of the death toll. From what I understand, I could be wrong, but I know that they definitely aren't being counted, and they're not part of those numbers that are being being handed out to the public. And so I just want to say that I think there are a lot of people who are sick, who get COVID-19, who don't ever find out if they ever even had it. I mean, there's no way for them to know if they were testing positive or not. So it's difficult to know if that is the case for them. And people just recover and they get better, like myself. They might get really sick and not be able to get a test, but they recover, they do better, or some people don't and they die. And so I think that those numbers are not to be 100% completely trusted, because there are people out there who are sick, who are staying at home, who never get a test and never know if they are positive for COVID-19. So that's something that I want people to keep into consideration. That's not to say that I disagree with what's going on, or how we're handling the situation, although we could do it a lot better. I really do feel like it's important to realize that those numbers might not be a true reflection of how many people are actually sick in the area that you live in, but here just in New York and in Westchester. So that's something that I want to say before I end this episode. So that's pretty much all that I have for you today. I'd be more than happy to answer questions. If you want to put any questions down below in the comment section, feel free to do so. I'm here to help in any way possible, by using my experience to help other people during this time. I really want this to be a way of helping people. If you get sick, if you know someone who is sick, follow these guidelines. Not guidelines, but, these suggestions that I have, like eating healthy, staying away from the cold, don't take cold showers, take elderberry if you can, make lots of teas, make sure you're just keeping yourself in check and staying warm, and making sure that you're not going outside into the cold air and breathing in any cold air, and just doing as much as you can to get yourself to feel better. And like I said, not everyone is going to have the same symptoms. Some people don't even have any symptoms or get sick, but they still carry that virus. For whatever reason, we got it this way. For whatever reason, other family members are getting it in a different way. But it is something worth noting. And if you get sick, you cannot always guarantee that you're going to get sick in the same way that I did. But these suggestions are things that I do suggest no matter what, especially eating healthy and making sure that you're keeping your body and having an environment in your body that's not going to allow a virus to continue to spread or do more damage than it needs to. So that's all I want to say. Like I said, it took 2 weeks. In total, I've been a week now without having had any fever or sweats or body aches or anything like that. I haven't had to take medicine in almost a week now. Tomorrow will be a week, and I'm doing a lot better. And I want this to be, in some ways, hope for you if you are sick, because I know that what the news is saying is really scary. And I just want you to know that I was scared as well. I was afraid for my family. I was afraid for myself. But, you have to do as much as you can for yourself, like eating healthy and thinking as positive as you can, and making sure that you don't stress yourself out so that you can recover from this sickness and that you can do better and know that you will come out of it, and that you're going to be okay and that your family is going to be okay, by making sure that you can do everything that you can to get yourself to feel better. So I hope that this has been helpful to anyone. Like I said, please share it if you can with people that you love. If you're uncertain about some of the symptoms, feel free to message me on Instagram or leave a comment down below. My Instagram handle is Amy J. Vele, which is VELE, the last name. And I'll put a link down below in the description box. So I hope that this has been helpful to you. And I will be talking to you guys soon and giving you an update in about a week and seeing where I'm at then. So thank you so much for listening, and stay well, stay safe, and good luck with everything.